It's not. Yeah.
Test. I think.
Hello.
Yeah, lots of stuff here.
Test. Okay. One of these mics was hold the mics.
Testing.
Hello.
Okay, let's start.
Yeah, it's on. Okay. It was on. Okay. That's the part if it's blinking.
Freeze link.
Okay. Should we go? Okay, we're ready to start the afternoon. Welcome back, everybody. We had a great discussion this morning. It really set the stage for what we will be doing here and in our panel on Smart One Water. My name is Dave DeZombach. I'm a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, and I work for Sunil Sinha. Been working together on the Engineering Research Center planning grant for the past several years on Smart One Water. Today, with our panel, I'll be giving a brief introduction of each of our expert panelists, asking them to give a little more about their organization and their role, and then asking them for their perspectives on how to bring the smart to One Water, to the One Water concept, and the role of human beings in achieving Smart One Water, and some examples from their own experience in trying to implement whatever aspects of Smart One Water that they would like to address. So they'll each give remarks for about 10 minutes. Then I have a couple of questions for the panel to get us going. Then we'll invite your questions and look forward to an interactive discussion with all of you. First, I will introduce all four of our panelists here. Ting Liu, Digital Technology Strategy Leader with Clean Water Services in Hillsboro, Oregon. Then we have Srini Vallabhaneni, Vice President for Water at AECOM, based in Indianapolis, Indiana. Beate Wright, Vice President with Carollo Engineers in Ashburn, Virginia, but Beate informs me her office is right across the street, so it should be Arlington, Virginia. And Ed Sorensen, Planning Manager, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, Anchorage, Alaska. Ed gets the prize for traveling furthest to get to us today. Thank you for being with us, Ed. So to get us started here, why don't we start with Ting? I'll ask Ting to talk about her organization, her role, and her thoughts about Smart One Water.
Thank you, Dave. Hello, everyone. I'm Ting Liu. I'm from Clean Water Services. It's a little bit closer from Anchorage, but we are also on the West Coast. It's the west of the city of Portland in Oregon. So my role is a digital technology strategist. So I'm responsible for delivering and transform our digitalization, as well as leading an integrated water resource and research team that providing molecular tools, modeling, and different process to support permit compliance, operation optimization, as well as the CIP planning, utilizing different tools and the processes here. So first, I want to introduce a little bit of Clean Water Services. We are a regional utility that is responsible for collecting and treating wastewater, stormwater, and also being part of a regional water supply in Washington County, where the high tech like Intel, Nike is headquartered in Hillsboro, Oregon. So our customer base is about over 600,000. So we just finished our 50-year anniversary celebration. So Clean Water Services started with the regional utility that is bringing all this small treatment plant together about in the early 70s. And we have this integrated watershed permit as a part of the result as a One Water. So I want to define first, as we are talking about smart One Water, which is a large theme. I really love the topic, and Sunil and Dave defined here. So what is a One Water to us, and what's smart about the One Water that we are implementing? So first is about the One Water. Is as a utility, we are maintaining and planning a lot of a great infrastructure. So that including wastewater, convenience infrastructure, pump station, stormwater side of things. And then we also, on top of that, we are adding the nature base and stream restoration. We're also utilizing the wetland to polishing the wastewater effluent, and that's adding additional DO and a lot of additional ecological benefit getting back to the receiving stream. Because we are integrated water resource, and the challenge for our receiving stream is we are accounting for almost 70% of the water flow within that region during summer, where it's very dry in Oregon. So think about that as wastewater treatment discharge, as well as we have some of the stored water release that counts for the 70% of the regional water. And this Tualatin River that is used for regional water supply, for drinking water, for agriculture, as well as for many recreational activities. So if we think about the outcome for what the water utility is for, we are part of this regional, considering how do we bring water and ecological health to the watershed. And I'll talk about why this is important and why we need a smart water to support that outcome. Regarding the smart water, I look at it, there are 3 component or layers for smart water as we transition to the smart water discussion. So first is someone talk about the strong foundation, with the SCADA system, with a lot of a business intelligence infrastructure put in place, which has been 20 years or decades about the IT infrastructure as well as the OT infrastructure. So I do see that utilities all have a strong foundation today. And then the next level is to leveraging these digital tools to maximize the value of a digital transformation. A lot of utilizing the business intelligence tools, Power BI, SharePoint, GIS on the system and application level to support productivity and efficiency and things. The third level is truly digitalization, and we talk about this morning on the digital twin on a more holistic and system level. So I'll talk about a few examples we are leveraging smart water. The first one is on the flow portal. So like I said, we have this, we are counting for 70% of the water in summer. And then each day we have a folks within Clean Water Services actively looking to the flow, the Tualatin River flow, which is the measured by USGS gauge and water quality sensors. And we also look at our SCADA information, how much flow we have during that day, how much flow is releasing to discharging to the rivers. And then they talk with the Bureau of Reclamation, they talk with the drinking water facility and saying how much water I need to release from my stored tank, which is a very tedious, and it's a lot of complexity looking to the spreadsheet, looking to USGS website. There's a daily phone call every day to talk about how much water we need to release to the Tualatin River. So that's where we can leverage digital tools and bringing the data from SharePoint, from SCADA data database, and from also the USGS website, and getting all this behind the things integration and getting to the GIS front end, the visualization for people to make more of a transparent and efficient decisions. So the first one is I look at is utilizing that data integration to bring more to the data visualization. And now we are also utilizing hydraulic modeling and looking to what if scenarios and the impact of released water to water quality and the downstream activities as well. So on top of that is that you can do what if scenarios and visualization and automation as well. So that's the first example, brings a more holistic and transparent information to users and provides a more of an efficiency on collaboration. And then expanding on that is our permit compliance is also flow-based, just so think about how complex our permit regulatory permit is. So, and this is a more on the winter season, depends on how much the river flow is, and our permit requires whether you need to go to nitrification or not, and how much flow you need to treat and discharge. So operators every day trying their best, and then at the end of the month, then they will know whether they meet the permit compliance or not. There is a lot of uncertainty people are trying to work through, and we have a great workforce, and we have been in the Platinum award for years. But still, again, it's that confidence and also the uncertainty they are dealing with during the winter all the time. So we started to look into how can we predict the river flow so the operators can know ahead of time 1 day or 3 days based on the weather forecast and based on the flow information and what the river flow will be, and then they have more lead time to adjust the process control and to be more confident getting in and out of a nitrification and managing the inventory. So that's the one we leverage with the Princeton University, and we did a pilot study to utilizing AI model to predict the river flow. There were a lot of lessons learned on data management and data quality, the importance to drive the AI model. And then we started to look, this AI model prediction is really good, but it's kind of an academic look and feel, and how we can make it more user-friendly and for operators to access and utilizing this information. So the integration becomes bring the predictions in, as well as some of you probably familiar with the clarifier state point analysis to managing your biomass inventory, which typically have been done by a process engineer with a large spreadsheet. It's very overwhelming for operators to understand the state point analysis, and it's always kind of a challenge for process engineers and operators to talk each other and how much process control change they need to make. So we started to think, let's utilizing a Power BI tool and then having all this curved information onto the Power BI. And that's really enabled more of the operators to do, and they can dial the different mixed liquor concentration, and they can make some of the changes to say the impact they are making. So I look at it, the part is the tools we have, a part of the knowledge we have, but how we can translate that information to be easily accessible and understandable by the operators. So brings more confidence and reduce the risk and the compliance risk perspectives.
2 minutes.
All right. The next one I just want to touch briefly is on the IoT sensors. It's the foundation is for utilizing sensors, the network, in order to make it to all the way to the digital twin. And in the morning, someone talked about the crowdsourcing, citizenship. How do we leverage that? So we are leveraging an open source IoT platform which is much more cost effective than the commercial IoT sensor package, which is easily 20,000-30,000 grand if you want to monitor a station there. So we're getting down to hundreds and thousands of dollars, depends on what you're monitoring. And we're using that massive information for water quality model calibration to help more with the data-driven decision makings here. So just want to ramp up and summarize. First is that the digital smart one water requires a partnership, requires from technology vendors, academic, consultant is all working together with the utility to get through this smart one water. Second, it's important to integrate and collaborate between different skill sets which including IT professionals, OT, SCADA, operation staff, ET, engineering, process engineers, SMEs, as well as the data scientists, as we all defined this morning together. And last, just the value of Smart One Water really provides efficiency, productivity, transparency, resiliency, and confidence for the utility.
Thank you, Ting. Next, we'll welcome Srini's remarks.
Good afternoon. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Dr. Sinha asked me actually to come and speak a couple of months, beyond 2-3 months ago. At that time, I was with the Kansas City Water. And after that, I switched to my jobs, and I'm with the AECOM for the last 2 months. But I appreciate being here today, and I'll still share probably my inside the fence utility perspectives today. He also asked me to really share what I envision, what the future of water like, especially around Smart One Water. I've been around the water business about 37 years and looking forward to clocking my 4th decade soon. So I'll be digital transformation part of it. I've been digitally transformed myself and the industry for almost more than 30 years. So this is a subject close to my heart. So I'll take a bit of a strategic level of view, maybe end with some call to action kind of approach to it. For me, Smart One Water, every time I heard, first time I was part of Future of Water Summit in Miami a couple of months ago, I thought about it. It's a Smart One Water. We've been dealing with the challenge of One Water mission we have, and then Smart One Water. So for me, I need to parse out, as Ting actually alluded and said, maybe I'll be repeating what she said. So I'll try to differentiate and maybe bring out other perspectives. So let's deal with this One Water first. For One Water itself mission, it's a different thing for different people. But we have that mission in on our charge. A lot of water utilities, the ecosystem around them actually working toward that One Water. Smart One Water for me, bringing that smart technology to enable, help us meet One Water mission one day. So first of all, on the part of the One Water, I see essentially there's 3 fundamental principles that I think we should I see in the future will drive us there, or we use them to get there. Is the number one, we have to have a systems thinking. When we think about One Water, means that we're managing full water cycle. Together, in our dashboard, we're connecting the dots. Every decision we make, we're looking at the connectivity. Ideally, that's where we want to go. So it's important to have a systems thinking. Number 2, that we need to be looking at a watershed level, river basin level view of things for accomplishing One Water mission. That's when I think will enable us from region level to local level, connect the dots back and forth. That itself provides a challenge for us in terms of the water governance and frameworks we need. I'll just explain that later. And then the third point is we need to value each part of the water, whether it's a water, wastewater, groundwater, stormwater, and we need to put a right value proposition there, and then connecting the dot that how that value equation will be managed through full One Water cycle operation. Now, I said about the river basin level, right, or regional level. In reality, that we have challenges the way we currently deliver water service to our public. And some part of the water, some cities have a water by one entity, water by different organization, maybe a regional organization looking stormwater, and who is watching groundwater, right? So it's the end of the day, it's how a public pay for your service, how that they get the service back, but it's flow through various different structures we put in. So when you look at the One Water or water management, water cycle management, how do you keep track? How do you align the governance to be able to, for us to realize the dream of One Water? I think want to think about is we also need a water governance transformation. We talk about a lot about digital transformation, right? Very similar to that. We have to keep the water governance transformation as the prerequisite to accomplish one water and bring the smartness along the way to enable us to get there. For some folks that probably not don't live in the water governance part of it, it is the governing framework how the political jurisdictions are the work, how the localized codes and ordinance work in collecting funds from public and in spending them. And there are even my example in Kansas City Water, I was overseeing wastewater engineering, stormwater engineering, and then the consent degree program we had there for the combined sewer overflow program. I have 3 different funding streams. I cannot mix and match. If I'm working there in a Main Street, I may be focusing on the problem in hand to solve, but while I'm there, I want to solve other aspects as well in water, beyond transportation and other parts and every other city agency works. So we got to have integrated thinking to be able to do that. End of the day, I mean, as a citizen of Kansas City till 2 months ago, I don't care how you do it. I'm paying you money. I need service. How you do it. So it's important to think about it. So without the governance transformation, I don't see how we get to one water mission. So I would call for action for me for the swim and the future actions of our industry is that let's keep that in the front end of the governance transformation to be able to enable us to do the one water mission. Yeah, the next part is the smart one water. How bring the smartness to enable us to get there? If you look at it, just only smart water aspect of it, we've been traveling on that journey for a while. More recently, we have a long way to go. You heard the experts this morning. So how our utilities are evolving? I'm going to be basing upon my experience in Kansas City and working worldwide before in my global role. Is the utilities are evolving pretty, I would say, not as rapidly what we want to, but there are open. They are listening. How do we? And then also they're evolving through their own journeys. Like I said yesterday, one of the panel discussion. Every utility have their own reference point where they are today, how high they can jump in year 2, 3, 4, 5, based on their own organizational opportunities and constraints. They're evolving there. So part of that, they're building the smart utility concept into their strategic action plans. So for those of you service providers here, I think that's where that you wanted to influence your utilities in terms of evolving their digital journey. And then 2, they're looking at the data security, cyber security, and they're looking at the IT infrastructure, and more importantly, change management. And change, that's where the most of the work needs to be done. And building trust. Technology consumption goes as fast as building trust with the users. So that's where the industry, service providers, technologists need to be conscious about. Make sure that you're selling it appropriately to those service takers. But if we don't do that, sometimes a good technology can go by without be maybe underutilized. So we all have responsibility there. So the digital utilities, they're evolving there in that fashion. But where they're evolving really is that they have a lot of digital solutions, but right now they're not integrated for them. These are random shots of digital solutions. So what their journey will be next 10 years would be that integrating those digital solutions, bring into the different layer, call it intelligent platforms. This is where the data, digital solutions provide the intelligence to act, but that will be comprehensive for the utility. What we call in Kansas City Water was intelligent wastewater platform, intelligent water platform. So this is where the front end, that's when that they're able to see, make the decision for in-time maintenance, real-time operations, and capital improvement programs, and finally responsibly adding new assets after maximizing the capacity of the existing system kind of thing. That's where the ultimately utilities is going to deliver their service, which is delivering the promise to the asset management to promise a level of service to their customers at the rates they can afford. And so the technology need to come and play to enable them. But if it's not enabling them to deliver better certain level of service, this is a shiny object, like people said today. It's interesting but not meaningful to them. So I'll stop there, Dave, and I'll take questions later.
Thank you, Srini. Well done.
Awesome.
Next,
Srini.
we have Beata Wright. Beata?
Yes, thank you. So I'm on my third decade. I don't think I'm going to make the fourth because that's a long, I feel like that's a long time. But
You'll make it.
yeah.
Mm.
So I am going to come from a really kind of high level strategic perspective about One Water, what it really looks like from my lens, and I'll explain a little bit about that, and then where I think it's going and where I see the sector going in One Water in the future. And as I wrote my notes, I started to feel a little bit of a naysayer because I thought about barriers. So I hope I don't come across as that, but there's some barriers, and you brought some up, Srini. So I'm with Carollo Engineers. I'm here in the DC office. I'm leading that office. We do water only consulting firm. We have a One Water practice at Carollo, and I happen to be the lead on the East region for One Water. I am also the principal investigator for the Water Research Foundation One Water and Pretreatment project that's coming out next quarter in 2023. Super excited about this pretreatment and One Water. A lot of pretreatment people weren't thinking One Water, and a lot of leaders don't know what pretreatment is. So look out for that report. And I'm also leading the U.S. Water Alliance State of the One Water Field, which is a really foundational approach to looking at where are we in One Water as not only just the water sector, but energy, ag, NGOs, like other people in our community. And that's really, really important. That's going to be part of my message. So, my perspective, I wanted to share a little bit about, who I am too, besides being at Carollo, and Paul Rush knows this, he was my former board member. I used to work for the Water Research Foundation, so I've had a nonprofit lens to it. Clearly I had the private lens. I used to be a director of operations for utility here in Virginia, so I have the utility lens. I was in the Army, I have a federal lens, and when I was at WRF, I was on the Hill a lot. So I worked with all the alphabet soups of the organizations, NIST and DOE and EPA and congressional folks. And so there's been an academia, with the research. So lots of different groups that I've been able to kind of interact with and see and understand how we look at water, which I feel has been really eye-opening for me on how siloed we are. And that's a barrier. But I'll get into that. So about 2 years ago, I was asked to lead a focus group in Virginia as part of the Virginia AWA and VWA Water Utility Management Group on One Water. And the reason I was asked is we had a really great workshop. A lot of people were interested. They got excited because we brought people in from Houston and other places and to talk about and LA about what they're doing in One Water. So this focus group wanted to educate others, and we're talking about smart water. Well, I've heard it called intelligent water systems. That's what Atlanta calls it. They came and talked to everything. Integrated water utility management. There's so many different terms. Smart water, just One Water. So in Virginia, one of the first things we did is like, well, what do our members know? And we conducted a survey to everyone in Virginia, which our members, again, are basically water and wastewater folks. So not a lot of, folks in ag or energy or anything like that. But even within our own sector, we had 80 folks, over 80, respond, which is a healthy number for a survey. And some people got it and understood it. Some people said, I don't understand the value of this at all. I don't need it. It doesn't help me. And so it'll be interesting to see what this national survey says. But in Virginia, it was all over the map on people really embracing it, people understanding it, people not understanding it, people actually not wanting to know about it. And so that I found that was really interesting and maybe a snapshot of how the whole nation and communities might understand about One Water. So but it's liberating. And we talked about how One Water is very individual to an organization. It depends on your needs. And I find that exciting because it doesn't have to be daunting, and it can apply to you and to your specific needs. And, the Water Research Foundation does have some work on One Water, and they have a blueprint, talks about how to get through it. And I remember they have a definition in there, and the words in the definition are about integrated planning, implementation approach, finite water resources, great definition. And I remember during the webcast that Mark Le Chevalier, who happened to be with American Water at the time, he was asked a question from the audience, and they said, okay, great. But what do you think about water, energy, food, and water resources and things outside of just water, wastewater, stormwater? And he's like, that's great. That's One Water 2.0, which is really what I think of the definition of One Water is. It's for those of us in the 30 years plus, cradle to grave. I don't know if you guys, the young people, probably don't know what that is, but cradle to grave, when something is born, and where do you follow it through that fate and transport of that, whatever it is, constituent process. So it's really looking at those relationships that we have on a watershed and community basis, not just water, but the relationship with energy, waste, resources, workforce. That's going to be a huge topic that I think that's the Achilles heel that we have in a sector. I'm telling you, it really is. I don't think there's one organization, whether you're a utility, whether you're a private person, whether you're in academia, whether you're a regulator, they're really hurting. Everyone is looking for talent, and who's coming in. And when they come in, they want more money and they want to get promoted, and they're not going to stay. So it's a big problem. So we're starting to see some great examples, though, of One Water. So I don't want to be a naysayer. I'm actually a very positive person. And so LA One Water, that is probably the foundational plan where they conducted a One Water plan. It's massive. There's a lot of common threads in these plans, and I'll get to that, but there's a lot of groups that were engaged in that plan. And what I love about LA, and that came out in the WRF pretreatment One Water study, is the work that they're doing in social equity and environmental justice. And a lot of us don't even know, well, how do we implement that? How do we integrate that? So there's some case studies in that report, but they show how they use their pre-treatment inspections. They have to go out out in the environment anyway, in the community, and they look at their significant industrial users and they promote the environmental justice and social equity. They see where things are happening. There are those eyes and ears out on the ground. So leverage your people. They also, there was an issue with air quality there. And what they did is they incorporated an air emissions inspection as part of the pretreatment program to help with some of the asthma issues. So another way that they tried to implement and help with environmental justice in the community. Denver One Water, also a recent example of a One Water project. Another thing that we're seeing is it doesn't have to be the utility to lead it. Utility is a partner, no doubt, but it can be the city and the government. It can be an NGO. It can be anybody. And it takes a village. It takes a community and the watershed. It takes a diverse stakeholder base, which the trust comes in to that, and the importance of building relationships. So Denver One Water is one to look out for. It's on they have it out there on the web. What the key to their success too, one of them, there's several, was that they had a local respected NGO in the community that really knew who to bring in, really had credibility, and they were engaged in the community. And that was really successful for Denver to make some progress. The last example of a One Water program that we worked on is One Water Honolulu. This one was really important because they developed a One Water ordinance that comes with the governance piece, where they saw, gosh, there has to be this driver in regulation. And this driver in this ordinance is like, okay, we're forcing you to get together, and we're forcing you to work together because we have some real issues in the climate change. And so One Water Honolulu is an example of where governance can be leveraged. And so those are awesome examples. So what do these One Water efforts typically have in common? Bold and collaborative leadership, engage stakeholders, achieving goals and sustainable recommendations, and willingness to change. There's a lot of change here. You got to get those early wins and you gain trust. So in the next in the next decade and beyond, what do I see evolving? Well, 10 years is nothing, a blink of the eye, right? So we'll see some advancements in technology, I'm sure we will, increased awareness in our water sector. However, we're fighting against people's urge to really fix all the mountain of work they have in front of them that's meaningful to them with limited resources, and that they might not think strategically. We don't have the relationships perhaps with energy NGOs in the community. So really thinking holistically and outside the box takes vision, leadership, time, extensive engagement. And unless there is a strong leader at the helm or an incentive to really think that way, it's very difficult for us to make progress as a sector. I think our water sector's Achilles heel is workforce. Institutional knowledge is leaving in droves with not as many folks entering the field and barriers in operations reciprocity. You can't move because you got to start all over. Take your test. Who wants to? I would never pass the PE again if I had to do that. So operators certainly don't want to do that. And that's a problem. They're the boots on the ground. So, we need to be the community. We don't need to invite them in our doors. We need to be there. We are the economic engine. We're the workforce. We are the moms and dads, and we drink the water. We have to be the community. That's the change. That's a transformative change we need, is culture in how we do things as a sector. With 50,000 community water systems, 152,000 publicly owned water works, and 16,000 publicly owned wastewater treatment plants were siloed in our own water systems. We don't have one voice. When I worked on the Hill for the foundation, they would ask us, well, who's AWA? What is the difference between them and AMWA? And what about NACWA? And they are confused because we would go at different, times to talk about our priorities, and we didn't have one common message. So when those national organizations, and they're powerful, but when they combine, get together and have one united message and go as a unit, that's when change happens on the Hill. So we cannot continue to talk to just ourselves and our water groups. We need to build relationships with other organizations in our community, in our watershed. We have our rivers know no boundaries. So we can't have boundaries. We need to think holistically outside of that. And again, I mentioned leadership, really important. Data, we're here for data, it's critical. But unless we actually know how to communicate that to decision makers in a way that they feel trust in the data and informs them, then it's all for naught. It goes back to the human element of understanding the data, how to use it, and how to make decisions with that. I think I got the main points because I see you're agitated, then I might be going too long.
Thank you, Beata. Thank you. Ed Sorensen, please.
Okay, well, thank you with all that. That was excellent. I don't know if I need to say much. In all seriousness, my name is Ed Sorensen, work for Anchorage Water Wastewater Utility. I'm the planning manager. Time flies. At Beata said 10 years, blink of an eye. Started there in 2004. Project manager, engineering construction. Did that for a while. Then I went over to asset management, GIS manager. Now I'm the planning manager. We cover private development, water sewer mains for subdivision, real estate, other agency projects, and special projects. Brief facts about the organization, kind of give you some context, where I'll talk more kind of on a utility perspective versus a high level strategy as I go through Smart One Water. We serve in our water system about 240,000 people. Anchorage is about 300,000 people. We have about 34 booster stations, 20 reservoirs, including 2 clear wells at 2 treatment plants, about 7,000 hydrants, 12,000 inline valves. Sewer system, briefly, 750 miles. To put it in context, a different environment, we work up there. Our water mains, the design criteria is minimum of 10-foot burial depth because of freezing. I don't know if we're getting that average freezing depth much anymore, but there are warming temperatures anecdotally and statistically. But we recently did a cost estimate for this neighborhood, poor well water quality. So they petitioned us. It's one of our duties there in planning. We're looking at $1,400 a linear foot for water pipe, PVC, like 8-inch. So that leads me to, our infrastructure. Back in 2018, there's an estimate it would take about $10 billion replacement value. If we replace it, then of course there's inflation. About 90% of that replacement value is tied up in pipes. The remainder 10% approximately plants, water and wastewater. So we're asset intensive. In terms of the asset management, that's balancing the risk, the level of service, and cost. Those are 3 pillars. I'm not the asset manager anymore, but I've been to the recent presentation. We are working to formalize our level of service sectors, so we can better deploy our monies going forward. So that's key for the Smart One Water. One of the keys of Smart One Water is people say within the utility, data rich and information poor. I've heard that. It's been a recurring theme here at the conference. GIS, asset inventory, fundamental asset management, very strong. Full pipes on the sewer and water side. We've got SCADA, HMIs for our PRVs, pressure zones, plants, etc. Failed to mention, we have about 300 people in the utility, a little bit less. So we rely upon technology to alert us to events, low pressure, water main breaks, etc. So moving into the question here, Dave, perspective on the One Water concept going forward, and I'm going to repeat some of the same themes because I came into this conference with them. Technology needs to align with, Anthony was talking about the leadership. And then what is leadership looking for is they're looking on return on investment. Since I've been there in 2004, every year, okay, how much is your estimate? Okay, what's the benefit? What's the cost? Well, if it's a certain amount of money, you do a business case evaluation, alternatives, reduction of risk, etc. So sustainability of the technology, high confidence level. Is it innovative or not? I mean, I know just in my experience, I've worked on some various technologies, and one vendor was $1 million project, and it was my decision, but they deployed something that didn't work out. But so I'm attuned to condition assessment, technology, and so forth. That's one of the things, Smart Water concept going forward. I talked about all our systems, is taking all our data to make better decisions. And that'll include smart IoT technologies, condition assessment. In terms of condition assessment, I wanted to kind of get one of the themes that I've seen work really well where I work, is that's bringing in a technology and so-called piloting technology and looking at the cost, what results to provide. And I've seen later on actually the utility buy the technology. Incrementally, I think that really works well. Another theme, Smart One Water and going forward is, and this is probably, some folks may be sick of hearing this, but workforce development. I'm the planning manager now, and I went from highly skilled technological GIS hydraulic modelers to working with technicians and a couple engineers that are not so technology savvy. So one of the themes, and it's mentioned yesterday also, that I've seen work is internships. Bringing in high school interns if you can, or college interns. My boss, he's a engineering director. He huge fan. I am too. I been in the business a while. I like working with these younger, really smart, energetic people. Like we say, it doesn't matter where they go in the water sector. They work with us. They learn the industry. If they go private, they go in the oil industry. We've had that. It's a win. They travel. They go all over the industry, including the world. So that's key. Another key for Smart Water, talking about workforce development going forward, is I'm having my operational budget for next year is documentation of processes. People will come and go. These, smart young people, or old, going to use that analogy, no discrimination, it's old, I'm older. If you stay there 5 years, you come in with the skills, you're technologically savvy, you contribute, you build. So that's the key going forward. I wanted to mention that for the consulting community because that was a theme in the previous panel's session. If you come in for a project, you can't document the process and document it well, probably aren't going to get the job. Future considerations, buy-in. I'll talk about one example here. I'm carrying on a project, just finishing it up. It's our hydraulic model project for water. It's flow pipes, it's Innovyze, and we've had a flow pipes model for a while. But this was intended to advance the model, and what we've done, the consultant, not me, I'm not the modeler, is incorporate water quality aspect into it. And we're using water age as a proxy. And what does that do for us? It helps us emergency planning. Also, we incorporated looking at hydraulic criticality for valves and pipes and broke every pipe. I don't think we normalized the pipes in there, but that's going to help with emergency planning in the future. But one of the success things in, talk about workforce development, people have changed over the years. And I've wanted to really get this one in there, and that's if we have a malevolent act, contamination, et cetera, got that in there, and we're running scenarios. I don't want to get into too much detail, but the head of the distribution operators is seeing this visualization after so many hours, event occurs, water quality. They're buying into it. I was going to close the contract out because we just did a pilot. Again, the pilot was, no, you can't do that. They said, this project has gone on too long. Okay, extend the contract, do it. So that's, I think, going into the future is buy-in and showing people the success, return on investment, tied with the leadership support of that. But I see incremental progression is kind of key. I like to jump sometimes too, but in the utility industry, I don't think that always works because we're rate-based. We are, didn't say that at the beginning, but public utility, we're regulated by the state of Alaska. We have tariff rules. We can't just bump up the rates. Serena and I were talking about revenues balancing with your expenses and so forth. So one other example on the incremental side or complementary condition assessment side is our source water is the Cluna Lake, approximately 30 miles northeast of Anchorage, about 30 minutes. It's a glacial in size lake, glacier fed, snow melt, water runoff, and so forth. There's like a 7-mile raw water pipeline. That's about 900 feet. It goes down to our treatment plant, 630-foot hydraulic grade line, flows into gravity to Anchorage. Very cost effective. But we've got some of our project management engineering folks doing some condition assessment, closed interval, checking the conversion potential along the pipeline, 22 miles. Okay, we were just planning our 2023 operational. And and talking about this is less than $5,000 per mile. Our asset manager said, "Oh, we're going to be doing condition assessment next year. It's 100,000. I don't know, it's electromagnetic or something. That's concrete cylinder pipe." So, division director, well, why are you doing closed interval? Well, we found a grounding pad that wasn't connected through the wires, and that's a safety issue. Plus, we could find stray currents. Here's the other complementary condition assessment technology, looking at the concrete cylinder pipe. So that whole thing, tools in the toolbox going forward.
Thank you, Ed. Well, we're going to, please queue up your questions, but I have some questions to get us started here. We heard this morning about technology, its important role in Smart One Water. One of our speakers said Digital One Water. So technologies have an important role to play in moving toward a more integrated future. Now, what I heard from each of you, though, I heard about bold leadership, I heard about governance, I heard about trust. I heard a lot of statements that indicated people are in the middle of all this. So our leadoff question here is, we need transformative technologies are important, as we heard this morning, and you also mentioned that. If we were developing a research program and we wanted to pin you each down on what are essential priorities for development and implementation of transformative technologies, what would you say? And that research program can include people too, not just devices. Whoever would like to take that on. Ed's holding the bag.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Dave. I think it goes back to your overall operation, your services, providing potable water, sewer, treatment, collection and treatment, excuse me, and how that aligns with your strategy, your level of service, your risk. There's got to be some sort of connective element to it, whether it's feeding up from data, key performance indicator, and so forth. So that's the driving factor. But you have to have people in the organization that understand the strategy and tactics, your champions, so forth. But another key too is, and I'm going to beat the drum on this one, is process, data creation, data management, data quality control, so you can develop that confidence going forward when people come and go in the organization and utility. They can have confidence. They don't have to go look for research, validate, etc.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. You were talking about data management and data quality. I think that's a key foundational piece for us to continue the digitalization. And during the lunchtime, we were talking with Jim and the others about the data management strategy, data governance, data quality review, and documentation. What we found is utilities have certain areas better than others, whether it's a compliance data, that's certainly QA, QC, but a lot of a process and other data set, it's a lot of data gaps and quality and ownership that utilities need to address. So that's one. I think the other part I look at is the data-driven model. We talk about AI, machine learning, and different models, and truly understand the limitations and the applications, as well as the integration with your traditional hydraulic model or process model, more like a mechanistic model. So how you work with that together, because I don't look at it as one versus the other. It's the integration of the two models where they both have limitations and the applications too. So we are piloting some of the strategic areas for that. And then on top of that is looking to the digital twin systems, because we also talked about it's not just a one twin. I look at it's a twin family. You have a wastewater twin, you have a receiving stream twin, and it's having that champion, getting to the workforce as well. How do you having that each area, the champion to develop that twin? Because it's not going to be just from your centralized IT or other effort. So bringing the championship and for people to advance that, having leadership support, as well the training is a big part. How much people are utilizing the information. The dashboard is nice, but do you look into how many people every day, how many people view that? So the training is another big piece of it I look at.
Just to add on a couple things, I mean, the driver, the business case, it has to be of value to the organization, right? Clearly, you're not going to develop a technology or put another process in unless there's value there. Getting back to your point, the process, super important. Operationalizing something so that people understand the training, how to use it. I mean, all this stuff seems common sense, but it happens often where a utility may develop or implement something and then it's daunting because people don't want to learn it, don't understand it, don't really understand what it means for them. So I think getting staff involved in the process of even a new technology, a new process, so that they see themselves in the value, so that you get champions behind it. And then the importance to also know that it's not proprietary, it's flexible, because we're always evolving and changing. So what does it look like as a living technology, something that can grow with you as you grow and can, so all of those are things that often are not thought of when technology is implemented. It's dropped, boom.
Well, let me summarize my take on it. First of all, answering your question to what research areas could, top priorities, really, you need to help with integrated systems, smart systems, and data governance. In short, I think that's where the primary need for utilities point of view that if you peel the onion, what you see there is that there are a number of random digital solutions are developed in every utility. When I got there in Kansas City about 3 years ago, when I had a sat down with the data manager, said, "Can you tell me how many data systems we have?" And she's going to keep going numbers. Say, give a paper. Say, start drawing some doodles to show me how they are. And then they start asking, are they talking to each other? Mm-hmm. Next question is that who has that system? When you look at it, some are in the city system, some are with the consultant, some with the vendor, some with some cloud systems. So immediate action there for me was to develop a data integration plan to streamline various data systems, retire some things that you have a no use or limited use or more investment are needed when there are better tools available. That framework is fundamental for it. And the next thing is data governance point of view. These data secure. A lot of times we talk about cyber security, but data security is equally important for to the institution. So that is really the big picture level, get us going. Next part is that when you integrate the data systems, what we could help with the industry is that taking various data systems, various digital solutions, driving towards to intelligence. I think we heard today, this morning, what we need is from intelligence. That's where the intelligent platforms, everybody got dashboards, right? But how much intelligence they're providing? So we loosely use the word dashboard, I have this, but what is the real intelligence to make a difference for the level of service you need to deliver to customers? So that's where the intelligent platforms need to be developed. What we need is an architectural layer on the front end, an intelligent platform. In the back end, you have the individual digital solutions talking to the interface. But the interface we talked about with the proper user needs, know the user stories, what users needed for delivering their KPIs, whatever the department they work in the city or utility. And then two, is it an experience for user? Can I use just like iPhone type of example? Can it be user friendly to be able to do what I need to do? That is very important. That's where we're talking about the evolving the academic area, human computer interactions, UI, UX need to bring into it. So if we could help to some general frameworks, how it could be a digital solution could be integrated and how it could be modularly evolve as things are dynamic. We can continue to mature them over the next decade and beyond. I think that will be a research area we could really beneficial to the utilities. Anybody else can say?
Okay, one more question, then we'll go to the audience here. Actually, I heard this morning, and from a number of you here, about partnerships, collaborative partnerships to determine what the goals are for a particular organization, and then co-create. Heard that word this morning, co-create. Different utilities, different communities will be able to take that on to greater and lesser extents. So my question is, as new technologies come online, new approaches, is there a role for third-party review and curation of new technologies. Maybe some of that is going on already. Maybe some of it's going on within internal organization. The city of Houston can do that themselves. Others can't. Welcome your thoughts on that.
You want to take off first?
All right, I'll start off first and let others provide their perspectives. You know, like a water tower kind of thing. We have thing going on with the Melissa Maker and the team that encouraging technologies to come to the utilities. That is the role we have to see. If you look back in the history, at one point of time, EPA did technology evaluations about 15 years ago, I believe, and then produced. And they provided resource to the utilities, but that again ran into some end at the end, but they couldn't really sustain it. So utilities, some of them I know, or have internal standards group. They will be looking at new technologies come in, but they may not have all the expertise needed. So I could see a university setting or otherwise could be providing the triage, various technologies come in with set criteria and able to provide what are the, how the technology can be used and what conditions or what scenarios, I think could help smaller, medium-sized utilities. I'm sure big cities like Houston, they may have internal resources and talent to do it, but I'm focusing on more of the mid-sized to small. I think that'll be a good idea.
Yeah, it may be water research.
Well, actually, I don't think WRF is involved in that anymore. It's WEF now that has, what is that innovation hub that tests kind of different new technologies? The names escape me. Do you remember? Lyft.
Yep.
Lyft. So Lyft is serving in that capacity that WEF leads, and they have a really qualified set of utility and industry leaders that vet, and actually, Walter, you probably know some of this too, but maybe not. But anyways, Lyft is an organization that is definitely doing some of that work, and they also, as I understand it, looking at governance stuff too, and the softer side, which I hate the term softer because it's essential, but it's all that other stuff that makes it happen, and so you could have a technology that's super, but if you can't communicate about the value of it and what it does for you, you're not going anywhere. So, as we're talking, I'm thinking about this too. And I had a conversation with Mark a little bit about leadership and how, you have to go in front of boards and get, anything approved budget wise and all this stuff, new ways of doing something, and being able to effectively market and communicate to decision makers is so important. And a lot of technologists don't know how to do it. They just don't know how to, not because they're not smart, they're smarter than heck, but they don't understand the audience and the words and the approach. So that's an area that'll help us, I think, advance some technology and new ways of doing things.
Looks like Water have some comments here.
Yeah, Beatrice, since you mentioned my name. Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. It's like a lot of focus on the engineering and digital skills, which are essential to operations. But yeah, you're right. It needs other skills in addition to that, with communications, finance, management skills, and things of that nature that needs to be expanded in our utilities. Get other people in there that may not have the hard, the engineering background, but are essential to having a good business running. Get away from just straight engineering, this, that, and the other, and this is what comes out. Is we talk about the customer, you should probably also think about employees as customers as well as stakeholders of equal value, and what are you giving them in return for them giving you their best effort.
Just very briefly, Dave. One of the approaches I've seen here is Anchorage Water Wastewater Utility is very supportive of our colleagues and folks going to conferences, whether it's WEFTAC or AWWA or our local statewide conference. We encourage condition assessment and digital transformation companies to attend the conferences. And I've seen many cases where they'll do a presentation and they come in on a proposal and they may get some work. So it's just that communication. And then once you have that knowledge, is telling other colleagues and letting them know.
Sorry, you spurred a thought.
Yes.
So Let's See It is another really wonderful opportunity for utilities to visit other utilities that have a technology or process that they're interested in. And that is an amazing program that probably isn't understood well enough. Everybody's eligible to put in your application. I mean, I'm not getting paid to say this. I just think it's a great thing. That also is, why is that? Because utilities trust utilities. Utilities, and they should, they're their peers and they want to know how, so you have this technology, but tell me the skinny, is it hard to operate? Is it not hard to operate? Like, what do you do with the residuals? All those questions that maybe the engineer might not have working knowledge about. So, consultants do lots of pilots. It's that information sharing on technologies. I think Hugh has his hand raised too, which I love because this should be engaging, by the way.
No, okay. Sure. It's really more coming. I think what Srini said, I think is a real path forward. I think in terms of finding that initial efficiency, right? Utilities, because they exist in this, definite fiscal environment where the margins are pretty thin in terms of what's the value return that you get, especially when you're kind of moving into technology. It is a conservative business, and that's really driven by the fact that there's a discrete service that you need to provide and a reliability that you need to really give. Part of the issue, as always, is some of what Beat had said, where finding out what do I get for this, because you're inundated with all of this stuff coming in on the promise of it, but not necessarily what is the actual process to implement. In most cases, these projects fail because there's a big air gap between what is the capability on the ground versus the ideal operating scenario for this technology in terms of how it works. And sometimes really they're kind of being sold a bridge to nowhere, in a sense. So I believe that there really needs to be an incubator process that allows for somewhat of a base of knowledge and really more of a matrix of applicability in a closer operational realm than really just the pitch of, well, my technology is great, it will work for you, versus, and not everybody can really do a pilot because pilots are disruptive, they cost money, it takes away strategic focus sometimes. So really having that clearinghouse, I believe, would be very beneficial for mid and small size utilities because they just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Incubator process, I like that.
Just follow up on I think it's I'm going to still reiterate what I said. I think important to have a place to go for to test these new technologies, but you have to frame that such a way that you're not judging a technology pass or fail. That led in the past to the appeals and lawsuits and everything. So you have to be very careful how you set your mission for those evaluating the technologies. So no pass or fail, but it has to say what is the merits for under what circumstances it applies. That also somebody can contest it, but that's why it never really materialized in an ongoing way in the past practices. But past practice is only to learn from, right? So I think we can do better going forward. But at the utility level, when I was in Kansas City, I have engaged at least minimum 3 calls from the new technology companies come and talk, and gathered relevant people in the organization to listen to. Pathway was set in there that any company with the new technology can come in, they can do value demonstration project. Through that, will give us a sample, and they will be proven to that utility, those stakeholders, what they're receiving from it. There could be life after it. So that is the one model we set up in there. City of Columbus, Ohio, a number of years ago, have a new product evaluation committee. I think they still have it because I called 4 months ago asking about some pipe material, what they're testing. So there are some practices out there, but they're not transferable, sustainable because of the vastness of utilities we have. going back to the lift and other, but even lift have its own frameworks are set, what type of things they do. So I think it's a good idea to take up a call to action. See, if we can come up with a platform where we can more of a triaging any new technologies come in, and then leave some one pages for the utilities to starting from.
Other questions, please? Yeah, please use your mic.
Oh, yes, thank you. This question kind of is pointed towards workforce management, cultural change, and also generational change. And I want to preface it with a statement that I've heard several times, not here, but and pardon me, I missed this morning's session, so I'm hoping I'm not repeating something. But I once heard someone say there's only two groups of people that understand quantum physics. Those are those who are mathematical geniuses or very young children. And so my question is, since one water is very close to the hydrologic cycle and how we reuse water in all different stages and all different types of environments, when should we begin that educational process, and where do you see us going in the future with this concept?
In the womb. Is that too soon? I mean, honestly, the kids today, they care about the environment and it starts early. And so we have such an opportunity to capture their imagination, to bring them into what we do and to talk about it. The last questioning and this one, culture to me comes up all the time. We were the silent servants. If we weren't in the news, that was a good day. And now we should be striving to be in the news to talk about the great work we're doing and who we are. But it's culture. It's our entities are old school. The boards, the staff, the environment. We're not used to tooting our horn. And so that's a bit of a problem. So a lot of the young kids don't even know what we do, right? And so I think it's an opportunity. I think we can turn that one around. I would start early. Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to add also, I think typically within the utility, there's already some public outreach programs that go into the high school or college and trying to attract the new talent. Especially in the digital field, I know this is challenging, and Water often says about why people come to the water sector versus, high tech or Amazon, Google. So what we have initiated, and I started thinking, how to bring more fun for the folks that to learn more about data scientist skill sets and to solve the water problems. So I'm in the stage of designing a hackathon at the regional level to bringing some of the high school students as well as the college students, and to also to having that more of a STEM program for people to be interested in. One of the things, I'm more coming from a technical perspective, and then I started to engage our public affairs, and people bring a lot of more, when do we need to engage? How do we build that into their curriculum and working with their teacher? So there's a whole nother world of thinking and planning. I think it can be done, but it needs to be finding the right partners, both internally as well as what are your goal to bring those folks online.
I would like to give another example for you. A lot of the cities have public engagement, outreach, education programs. They may vary how they set up and how effective they are. But under my most recent experience in Kansas City Water, under my staff, I have 3 full-time people on the public education. It's not engagement, it's not outreach, just education. So this has been going on almost for 8 years, but more so revamped 3 years ago. It is a set program, goes to the number of elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools to go and hold fun events through that, doing the education through the process, but also they give them a test kind of thing just to see how much of a reception is there from the children, so that we could actually improve the process. So we report that, actually, matter of fact, for the MS4 program, part of it, annual report, we reported all this, I think there are about 10, 12 dozen programs in various things with actually branded names. So same thing with the other annual reports, we actually showed that to the regulatory agencies and public, we are doing what we can do. So that is actually very effective. But if you, of course, you do execute properly.
give a couple thoughts here. I heard a couple themes there. What's key is getting the word out, that our importance of our work and water and so forth to the schools. We do that in Anchorage. We've got engineers that will go into the schools. But then taking that down to, kind of a fundamental level, we're talking about data scientists. And what do we need for the industry? And I don't know if I can answer that question because it's a balance of technology and the human element. Like fundamentally, I love to use Excel. I used to get into SQL and all that stuff. But like Excel, you can do conditional formatting, you can take a data set, you can do FN. What kind of skills, I guess, from a research standpoint, what's kind of our baseline to get people in there? I'll give you an example. That's when I was in the GIS, we got an intern. His skills were data science. And then the finance department found out about him. Well, they took him upstairs and he was doing pivot tables and all sorts of stuff. So, the threshold, I'm kind of getting off into the research a little bit, Dave, but where do we want to go? And then there's the technology aspect of it too. One other example, I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit. I've got the assessments where we, in planning, we levy a pro rata share when someone connects to water or sewer. I'm finding out people are leaving and the complexity of the GIS, editing, cutting, pasting, all this stuff. It's not that difficult, but it's not working. So we're going to change the technology platform. We're going to make it simpler because we recognize the skills aren't going to be there maybe for this amount of pay we're paying right now. Because if you got the skills we need, you're not going to come to work for us.
Walter, please.
Yeah, you're talking about having people trying to provide public outreach.
Could you lean in a little bit toward the mic?
For the public outreach for utilities. Why don't you hire people that, like these social media influencers to start reaching younger people? You start contacting TV stations to come out and look at some aspect of your business. Don't treat it like you're a utility. Treat it like you're selling something that people want. Of course, people want water, but something that's not water related, like you're selling cell phones to them or something like that. You got to pick it up so people don't just ignore it, just like in front of their face. But that's one of the things I was kind of thinking about. You want to reach young kids, you got to have somebody that thinks like a young kid.
Yetta is the parent of a social influencer.
I am. Well, a couple things. So wearing my my Loud and Water hat when I was chair of the AWA section in Virginia, I care deeply about getting the word out there about what we do. And I remember our board approved radio ads at the time. They were very expensive.
Yeah.
And they weren't that many. And I don't know who listened to it. I didn't have good data analytics. So we couldn't afford that. And utilities, again, wearing my Loud and Water hat, we care deeply about those are our customers. We want to be the person to reach out to them. So I know that I'm sure Loudon's not alone on that. I think they still feel that way. I work with them. So a lot of utilities feel that their customers are their customers. I think that there is, though, so much to learn from social media influencers. I really do, Walter. And I think we can leverage that. I think we're seeing some of that in some of the films that are out, some of the I don't know the names of them, but you might have seen them with some of popular, stars that are starting to talk about water. We've only tapped into that. We again, it's that trust and relationships. We don't normally have relationships with rock stars or movie stars, but if we did and we got them involved and created some sort of awareness in a way that was mainstream and reached to kids, I think that would be amazing. I think there are things to learn from social influencers for sure. Anybody else?
So, can I say something?
Yeah.
So you kind of hit a hot button topic for me because I was really doing this, especially when I was on the utility side. I would caution, Walter, the social influencers, right? Because utilities themselves have to walk this fine line between what is their service responsibility and their role and being dragged into anything else. They already have to do with the board and everybody else pulling them in all different directions. So I think the outsourcing of it that way. I think really the benchmark of this is the fact that it's exactly what Beat said. Traditionally, we don't want to engage. We have a negative engagement model, usually in utilities, right? when I was at the utility, we did just an analysis of what is the communication contact points that we have with a customer. And most of it was negative, right? First time you engage with the utilities is when you got a bill or when you set up your account. Outside of that, we're only engaging with you when there's a system failure or a warning that there's something else that's really going wrong. So you really built no positive social credit and spend when we actually needed that investment in platform in terms of doing that. That really is just about a couple of things. And what Beat said certainly about the way that we go about the means of engagement is very applicable. Is always the traditional engagement methods that are not really, reaching the users where they are. Radio ads, mailers, all these other things are really there. I think it's really more of a strategy of diversification, right? And not necessarily influencers per se, right? Because now it's just emerging where utilities are start to really see that the real currency that they trade in is not in the volumetric delivery of water, but in the service delivery that's really there, right? And that in itself requires an engagement model that establishes that transfer of value between both, right? It's no longer enough to send you a bill and that was what they engage with. Part of that too was that if you start to look on what customers evaluate as essential services, that has completely changed from 20 years ago. The ISP provider is number one, right? And then water is really at the bottom. But the difference in terms of how that works is really just based on what is spent in terms of the value of that engagement with that customer base. I think the biggest problem is in many cases, utility employees are all customers, but they leave that hat when they walk in the door.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
If you
Be
remember
the
that,
community,
then it
be
works.
the community. I love what you said. Meet them where they are. And I was just at an Aqua utility strategic conference, and they talked about how the energy sector in advance of a storm is proactive and out there in the community saying, hey, we got our crews rolled up. They're waiting. We're ready for it. We're good. How many water utilities tell the community, hey, a storm's coming, we have service, don't you worry, we know it's essential. We don't do that proactively. We do that reactively. And so meeting people where they are in the community, be the community, is really the change. Oh, and another thing that triggered a thought about workforce, and this goes back to your question, Mark, a little bit. I have two young daughters. One's the social media influencer. The other one's a normal GIS person, old school. And she loves her job because she could do it remotely 100%. And she is excellent at it and doesn't want to, left her other job because they wouldn't let her do that. And so, the whole dynamic now of what COVID has taught us. Now, we're in the water business. Not everybody can do that. But what are young people thinking about when they look for a job? What do they need? How do we change? Again, it's the culture. It's that change. It's so important.
Okay, so Hugh, a great point. I think inside the fence point of view, I think the social media influencer, think about it. We are providing water utility service. And yes, we tend to be more reactive, but then you see there's a trend. Depends on the organization. We have a trend. For me, the influencing point really comes in next PBS, documentary that Sunil has been talking about. We can influence on a grand scale, but utility level, it happens at the regular communications. Now, Twitter is a big thing in KC Water when I was there. We set out information. All it is that information influence somebody, that's fine. The idea is to communicate to your customers. And also there is a rules and regulations of what we can influence certain things. When we raised for the working towards for $800 million wastewater bond, staff cannot go and advocate. We cannot go and promote by law. We can do that. We can go to public meeting and present why the city have all these needs. By borrowing this money, deliver a better service and for low money, lesser money. I think that's what we can say, but we cannot advocate, we cannot influence. So there is a fine line there. For the big programs, there is intended public engagement outreach. And I had that consent decree program. So we're spending about $200 million a year, about 50 projects at a time. Each project have an element of outreach and engagement at block level. That happens. That again, not influence, only to communicate what services we're delivering, what their inputs are.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times you just see a sign saying, what's going on there, but I think Beata made a good point. Like the power companies are out in advance of something happening to try to make sure the service is maintained. Do you think there's anything, lessons to be learned from looking at like the electric utility industry or the natural gas, like Washington Gas in this area, as far as how they advertise? I mean, it's not too, you see these advertisements, but it's not real hard in your face sort of stuff. It's just keeping people aware of what they're getting. I mean, do you think the water utilities could do something along
So
those
Boss,
lines?
I think the good points there, but I think we don't want to generalize what an utility is doing. Like Betty said,
Yeah.
we have 50,000 water utilities, about 16,000 wastewater utilities. You'll see a whole spectrum of level of effectiveness of what they're doing. So I want to be cautious saying that whether we're doing or not doing, it's all about how we're doing, what effectiveness it is. So I can speak to one example that, out of $12 million I spend a year on a program, we spend about 20% of that money on the public engagement outreach. Because we know this very well.
Well, it sounds like Smart One Water involves Social One Water in a lot of ways. I'd like to thank our panel. Before we do that, I just want to, the next and final panel of the day will be focused on governance. So some of the issues that we've launched into here deeply, we will be re-engaging in a half an hour at 4 o'clock. Please join me in thanking Ed, Beate, Srini, and Ting.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very good.
Yeah,
point.
Your energy is
I get-
contagious.
I get so
Yeah.
excited.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
we
but
should,
we should do that. Yeah. No,
What is saying?
They said that it should work. Just click it once and it will
Yeah,
start.
sure. But it's not. That one's working.
But,
Okay.
put it
Hello,
on
hello.
Right.
Oh, it's charging.
And then close.